Hello and welcome, Micaela. It's great it worked out today, right? In our busy schedules, it's
Yep.
always very dynamic between you and I. Thank you very
Yes,
much for
thank you.
attending. And it's actually interesting because we have met through a business connection. So I'm really flattered that we kind of found a common denominator, so to say, which is dog ownership. So I think you're one of those. I like to call myself a crazy dog woman. I wouldn't kind of put that on you, right? But you're kind of playing in a similar league. But
Yeah.
what I love especially about you is your passion for a very clear cause. So welcome to this dog summit where we're trying and supporting especially first dog owners, but dog owners in general with valuable tips and tricks, anything around dog ownership. So welcome, Micaela. Maybe you would
Thanks
quickly
so
introduce.
much.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, really. It means a lot to share about dogs and the cause and to help people really be great dog companions, just like the dogs are our companions. We
Yeah.
get to be their companions too. So,
Right. That's a very important point, right? So I like to refer, I like the word pet parents, but I especially like the word dog guardians. I like the word guardian. I don't much appreciate the owner because it's not a thing. For me, a dog is not a thing. It's actually something very close to heart. So tell us about yourself, Michaela, and your dogs.
well, first and foremost, I'm part Italian, part American. I live in Los Angeles part-time and part-time in Florence. I'm an emotional intelligence business strategist. So I work with entrepreneurs to help them really understand how their emotions are affecting their bottom line and how we can better strategize and shift the way that we think about ourselves and how we lead our business. But, as business owners, a lot of us have causes and things that we like to donate our time or donate our resources to. And I've done lots of different giving in that way. A lot to women in domestic violence shelters and children's organizations, things like that. But this year and moving forward, this new cause found me. Somehow it found me. And I found myself around June time, really understanding and becoming aware of the huge crisis that's happening here in Los Angeles in the shelters, where a lot of the dogs are unfortunately getting euthanized. And so the cause that is now that I'm focusing a lot of my energy towards is stopthekill.com, which is a group of us advocates for dogs here in the LA area and a little beyond, who we are actually saving dogs from the shelter. So when they go on the red list, when they've got a few days left to live and they're about to be euthanized, we work really hard to find them an adopter, a foster, and a rescue to come together to save them so that they don't meet that untimely.
Well, you're actively seeking new homes for, so to say, dogs that have been stranded in the shelter, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So, are you a dog owner yourself? I think, right? Since a long
I
time.
do. I do. I have 3 dogs of my own. And
Great.
even there, like if you talk to me in June, I only had 1 dog. And then I found myself fostering a beautiful Malamute,
Hmm.
Alaskan Malamute, who I've adopted since, and then another little Chihuahua who somebody found on the street, and they were going to take her to the shelter. And I said, "Don't do that because she's most likely going to get euthanized." So I took her in. So now I have 3 dogs. I have 2 Chihuahuas and an Alaskan Malamute.
Wow, that's a great mix. Yeah, I myself live with 4 big dogs and 4 small dogs. So I'm a big
Oh,
dog
you've got a
lover.
lot.
Yeah, I do. I do. I had a lot for a long, long time, and I love my dogs. So I'm a big, passionate dog lover.
Yeah.
So, I mean, talking about that, choosing the right dog seems to be a challenge. I find that a lot of people I know, lots of friends of mine as well, they tend to choose the dog because it's pretty. Like they find it. They kind of associate the looks with the dog
Mm-hmm.
with something they like. So they would, oh, a Dachshund, this is such a cute dog. And then we know that Dachshunds, for example, are very stubborn, and then they don't really know anything about mud dogs. And do you have any, like, what do you think about, shelter dogs and adopting a shelter dog? What do you see as like the opportunities here and the challenges?
Yeah, I mean, especially here in the US and I'm sure in some of the other countries around the world. But here there are so many beautiful dogs and breed dogs or mixed breed dogs that end up in the shelter. For example, here in LA, there's a huge crisis with huskies. Because
Right.
of Game of Thrones, everybody wanted a husky. So they went out and they bought a husky from a breeder, not really knowing what they were getting into. So like you were talking about, uh,
Yeah.
the other
Looks.
breed, yeah, the
Mm-hmm.
dogs. People didn't know that huskies are very high energy. They do talk a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they require a lot of walking and attention, and they shed. And so what's been happening is a lot of people have found themselves with a dog and they can't somehow deal with one of those things, and so they just dump him at the shelter. And when you then go and you rescue a dog from the shelter, you are actually really bringing into your home a traumatic being, a
Mm.
being that's gone through some trauma. So I tell people that before you go to buy a dog from a breeder, consider adopting a dog from a shelter because they really need that love and care that somebody decided to remove from their life, for whatever reason, and a lot of times for silly reasons. Like for example, one of the dogs that we rescued recently was a 1 year old husky, and she had been adopted twice. The last time, people didn't want to deal with her hair, so they literally cut her hair off,
Oh,
thinking
wow.
it was gonna resolve the problem. But number one, the husky has long hair and has that type of hair for a reason. It keeps it himself or herself warm, right?
Or also cool in the summer, right? They have an
Exactly.
undercoat which really protects them from, yeah, like a
Exactly.
lot of dogs.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure.
Exactly. So this poor dog. Oh, and then the other thing is, well, she was she's really, really hyper. So she's very high energy. So I understand that, okay, you might not want a dog high energy, but a lot of times what happens is people get set on, I want this dog, and then they don't do the research. They don't really make the commitment. It's a very conditional commitment. Well, if the dog fits into my schedule, if the dog doesn't pee in the house, if the dog doesn't shed, if all of these ifs and conditions, and then if the dog doesn't meet that condition, which the poor thing, doesn't even know what the expectations are being put on it.
Mm.
Then it gets dumped in the shelter. And a lot of shelters, they just don't care for the dogs. There's no heat. They don't get fed well. They get put in cells with other dogs that maybe they don't get along with, and then they end up fighting, and sometimes to the death. There's been many instances in some of the shelters here in LA County where, yeah, there's been, dog fights, and then one of the dogs or both the dogs end up they end up killing each other. Or like, you've got 8 dogs that are yours. I have 3 dogs of mine, but I currently have a total of 7 dogs in my house. No, 8 dogs in my house because I'm fostering 5 dogs. A mama with her 4 babies, and she was one of these dogs that was dumped. She
Yeah.
was somebody's dog, was dumped with her puppies at 1 week old, alongside. She was brought into this shelter that was not at all set up to support a mama with her puppies. And 4 died in the shelter because it was just too cold. It was just
Mhm.
too
Yeah.
cold,
Yeah, it happens.
right? And then she was malnourished. Anyway, so these dogs go through a lot of trauma in the shelter.
Yeah.
So not only do they need you, they need your love and care and attention and commitment, but they need your patience, right? And so,
Mm.
and they need you as a lifesaver, because when you do adopt a dog from the shelter, you're literally saving a life,
Right.
right?
That's
Um,
I think that's a very good point, Michaela. I think patience is one of those, and I want to clarify, right? I really want to clarify this because you're referring to shelter dogs, and I think they need even more patience. But what I found is a dog in general
in
needs
general,
patience,
absolutely.
and I find it very funny because humans need patience, right? I mean, meeting other people needs patience because sometimes you kind of go meet somebody and you go, seriously? So you need patience for anything. A
Trust me.
puppy, like a breed puppy you get from a breeder, I mean, can be really high maintenance, right? So a shelter
Yep.
dog needs
More.
patience,
Yeah.
enormous patience, but there are also dogs you would adopt from a shelter who feel, if you really embrace the challenge, I find they really feel that this gratefulness. So I find these dogs are incredibly grateful, right? Often very much more grateful. That was bad English. Much more grateful than if you get a puppy from a breeder. So
Oh, sure. Yeah.
that's quite
I mean,
amazing.
it is. First of all, they're very resilient, but
Yeah,
they really feel they're sentient beings. So
yeah,
a lot of people think that a dog is a thing.
yeah. I know.
That's why then they have no qualms
Yeah,
in dumping them at a shelter or giving it up, right? But they're sentient beings, so they do feel, and they are grateful. So the Alaskan Malamute that I was fostering and then I ended up adopting, he was just one of those cases. First of all, he's the best dog ever. He doesn't bark. He's totally trained. So he belonged to someone because he knows how to sit, he knows how to do down, like
wow.
he knows how to do paw. So he's a trained dog, right? So you can find in the shelter dogs that are already well rounded,
Yes.
who have just had, kind of a bad experience. And then you can find the total other extreme, like dogs that don't have any training whatsoever. But to your point, dogs in general absolutely require patience, but they require your commitment.
Yeah, they do.
You
And
can
it's a
love
long-term commitment. It's a
Yeah,
long-term commitment, right? It's not something, and that's kind of, I think you had the same problem as us in Europe. We had a lot of people buying, getting, adopting dogs during COVID. And then, I mean, suddenly companies now more and more go back to no, 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 more home office or a very limited home office, at least in Europe. And you end up with a lot more dogs in the shelters now.
hmm
Mhm.
yeah, that's what's happened to here too, on top of the other things that
Yeah.
that affect it, right? But yeah, so a dog in general, I think when you commit, if you are a dog owner, you really want to bring that grace and patience to your dog because they really don't know any better. So if they choose something, if they pee in the house, then it could be a sign of maybe there's some anxiety,
Yeah.
maybe they do need some training. So get them some training.
Yeah.
Get them
Positive
some time with
reinforcement.
yeah,
Yeah.
someone that can support you as the dog parent to support the dog and not doing the thing that you don't want them to do, right? So they also get to be trained, right? They get to be trained if they're not trained. But I think what's really important for people to know is that when you are a pet owner and a pet parent, you want to set your dog up for success.
Yeah.
And so you set your dog up for success by being consistent when you feed them, right?
Mhm.
Being consistent when you take them on a walk. Being consistent on certain ways that you treat them, right? So that it's just like a child. When they have repetitive behavior, number one, they learn. That's also a way to train them.
Yeah.
But number two, then they expect that from you, and then you can expect a similar, a certain behavior back, right?
Yeah, I think that's a very important part. And I think generally also, again, as you mentioned, Michaela, also with children, especially with small children, we forget that routine is one of the best educational measures you can have in the sense of, as you say, right, it's managing expectations and kind of setting the framework, if that makes sense, for the dog to actually be able to succeed, right? So
Mhm.
you are able to say it's a good dog. And I always come from really positive reinforcement. I am not a big fan, and I've never been, and I've really been successful with that positive reinforcement, right? So again, like a bit like with a child, right? You wouldn't tell a 3-year-old child not to have a temper tantrum. Just
Right.
doesn't work, right? It has a temper tantrum, but what do you
You
do? I
ride the
mean,
wave. You ride
right?
the wave of the
Where you
tantrum.
ride the wave, and you ignore it as best as you can, because as more attention you give it to, like, you are going to reinforce the negative behavior. And I find that extreme in dogs, right? So if you start punishing, that's definitely not the way to go. Instead, you kind of, you know give it a positive reinforcement when it behaves the way it's expected to
Yeah.
behave. So
Yeah.
and
Another point also that I'd like to make is a lot of people think that, dogs don't belong in the house or they're meant to be outside. And yes, there are some breeds that that's what they're meant to, but most breeds, because now they've been domesticated, they really want to be with their human,
Yeah, it is. That's
right?
that's a fact.
And
Yeah.
that's why at the beginning of the call, I said you become their companion, just
Yeah.
like they're your companion.
Yeah.
You're their companion, right? They do want to be with you. I mean, even right now, as we're talking, the foster dog, the mama, she's right here on my lap with me. I've been gone all day. She hasn't seen me. And so she's now attached to me because I've been taking care of her and her puppies. And so she's here wanting some of that
Yeah.
security, feeling secure, some of that affection, right? So please don't put your dogs outside unless they're a breed that's meant to be outside and meant to be kept outside. But most
Yeah.
dogs, because of their domestication, they want to be with you. So
Yeah,
let them
I
be with you.
agree. And I think mental stimuli, right, is also part which I mean, while I'm totally supporting what you say, I think the dog has to be with its guardian or with its human, right, with its favorite human. I think there's mental stimuli is really important. So I'm not a big fan of, the dog lives on the couch all day, basically. So you mentioned it before, have your walks, have your, a dog needs this kind of, mm, this kind of, access to nature, the access to the outside world as well, because I think that makes them really work with their head as well. So that's tiring them out. So if you expect the dog to be only lying on your couch, again, there might be some breeds, which
Yeah.
which work. Otherwise, an intelligent dog that is not stimulated in a good manner will become destructive in the sense of,
They will find a
you
way to
yeah,
entertain themselves.
eating your shoes, eating your cable. So that's kind of, I think, one of the big learnings I had over the years.
Yeah, and another, just also to this point, is really understanding also the environment that you're bringing the dog into. So look, not to say that people who live in apartments can't have dogs, but if you do live in an apartment, be mindful of the type of dog that you're going to bring in.
Sure.
There was a friend of mine who was telling me that a neighbor of hers has a Great Dane in an apartment, and the person is gone most of the days, and this poor dog literally is confined to an apartment with a little patio, and he howls all day because he's a big dog. He's really meant to be in a greater environment, number one, but he's also meant to be taken a lot on walks, not to just stay home all day, right? And so this
Mhm.
poor dog is howling, and I don't know what else he's doing, but
Yeah,
he's almost locked up
sure.
in his apartment, right? So you really want to be mindful of the type of dog that you're bringing into your environment. Make sure
Yeah,
that it's aligned, right?
yeah. So, Michaela, how do you communicate with your dogs?
That's a great question. I do tell them all the time that I love them. I tell them that they're good doggies. I give them a lot of hugs and pets, and just give them the attention that they want.
Mm.
But mainly, I do talk to them. I tell them that I love them and that they're special and that they're good.
Yeah, that's really nice because I find that's a very big part of that. I think a dog has very fine antennas when it comes to
Oh yeah,
communication, and whilst they might not understand the words we're saying, they do understand the feelings we share,
yeah.
right? So
And words
and
words have energy.
yeah, totally. And they pick up on our moods. So I want to kind of, say, I'm sure you experienced that, right? So they pick up on our moods. So my dogs totally know when I'm nervous. They kind of leave me alone in that moment. Or, I have one dog, when I'm nervous, it always comes to me. The other ones would go, but there's this one dog which is like sitting beside me and I'm going, oh, okay, got it, right? I'm gonna
A
so
dog
that
is a healer,
right. Yeah,
a healer dog.
absolutely. So, yeah, that's amazing. Michaela, the shelter dogs you have adopted, what would you say do they give to you on a daily, like daily? What is the best thing about the dogs?
Yeah, well, actually, just to kind of also kind of take from what you just shared the story with your dog that comes to you when
Yeah.
you're nervous, right? Dogs actually can be really amazing healers for us and bringers of joy and just a sense of, you know, being able to contribute to something that's greater than ourselves. So for me specifically, my dogs really make me happy. I'm happy to
Mhm.
come home to them, to be greeted with a lot of joy and happiness and excitement that I'm home, right? But it's really joy and fulfillment to just know that I've contributed to another living being, especially the shelter dogs that I've saved, right? That I've been able to contribute in that way in
Yeah.
saving their life. Um, but it's the joy and the sense of kind of groundedness that I get from them.
Ah, that's interesting you should say that. I do have that very much. That's one thing. And of course, to be honest, I mean, it's really this the way when I walk with my dogs in nature, that's like a double grounding
Yeah.
exercise, right? Because I have nature, I have the dogs, I see them run through the fields or, play or trying to run after a rabbit, and I get all worked up, and it's like that there's this dynamic in nature and the freedom of this, which makes me so fulfilled. And I wish for a lot of people to actually experience that.
Yeah.
Gives a lot of peace.
Yeah. It is absolutely like even just going on walks
Yeah.
with my dogs, it's almost like a walking meditation.
Yeah.
As they're getting their walk and their exercise, then I get to also just kind of unplug, leave the phone at home, and have that moment of, okay, I'm just here present with myself and my dog, and just just kind of enjoying just being, right? Dogs give you a lot. They give you
Yes.
a lot. In fact, there's a lot of programs out there. Dogs for seniors, dogs in prison. There's an amazing program here in California where inmates, they get
Hmm.
to train a dog for service, and so they get to keep a dog and train the dog for a certain amount of time, and then they know that that dog is going to help someone with disabilities, right?
Beautiful.
This kind of
Yeah.
beautiful circle. So dogs are amazing. They're just
Yes.
amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so
You
much,
wanna
Mikaela.
treat it you want to treat them with the same respect and dignity that you would treat another human being.
Yes.
Human
And
being.
and what I always say with somebody, I have a lot of people asking me, so how do you train a dog? So I always say there's three things they have to do, right? They need to be able to have a good recall, right? When they're off leash, so you want to be able to recall them. They have to be able to walk on a leash,
Mhm.
right? And they have to be able to listen to their name,
Yeah.
which sounds like really normal, but if you overuse a dog name, the dog will stop listening to its name. So there's lots of, dynamics around that.
Mhm.
But the basic education I find every dog needs is the four-letter word, which is love,
Yeah.
right? Because the dog feels if you love them.
Yeah.
So if you come from that place, I think education becomes, or training becomes, really, really easy.
Yeah. For sure. For
Yeah.
sure. And that's why it's important to not see them as a thing, but to see them as another living being, just like we are, right? The only difference is that we have the capacity to reason, right? And speak, right? And if the roles were reversed, we certainly wouldn't want to be treated in the way that some animals get treated, some dogs get treated. So
Thank you
treat
so much, Michaela. I think it would be worthwhile to say, if there is any way we our sorry, I'm a bit tired. Our audience can kind of support you in your cause. I mean, if you want to mention that, that would be
yeah.
great. Just why
Yeah,
we.
so basically, the cause is we have a big vision, but right now we're starting with just saving the dogs from the shelters, and so we do look for a lot of fosters and adopters, and we do not shy away from them being in other countries. So in fact, we are shipping 2 dogs to Germany next week.
Mm, nice.
So we're looking for fosters and adopters. If you go to stopthekill.com, there'll be a place for you to enter your name, email, and phone number, and we will contact you to see how you want to support, how you want to participate. If you want to foster a dog, we'll go through what that all entails. That obviously we don't have time to do right now, but yeah, and then there's an opportunity to donate as well. Make sure that in the comments you put stop the kill, because we are partnering with a rescue nonprofit. And yeah, so we're just looking and referring anybody else that you think might be able to help us find fosters and adopters for the dogs. Share the website, stopthekill.com.
Thank you so much, Micaela. I wish you a wonderful rest of your evening. And it was a pleasure to see you again. So
You
great,
too.
right? Right. So all the best, and all the best for the pups and the mom. And I hope you find a wonderful home.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Take care, Micaela.
Yeah.
Bye. Bye.